Live from Studio 3, this is Packaging Today with Evelio Matos, Adam Peak, and Cory Connors. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's December 2nd, Monday.
December. Crazy.
Adam Peak.
Hey,
weenuslube.com, code cyber.
use code cyber to get 50%
more
off your order at weenuslube.com. But for real, you should go do that because I still have a bunch in my closet and I like to get rid of it all. 50% off of Weenuslube at weenuslube.com. What a great gift for all of your friends and family.
And we got Cory Connors, Sustainable Packaging Podcast host. What's up, man?
Not affiliated with the Weenus Lube, but support it. And I've heard it's the best Weenus Lube of all time.
It's the best on the market currently.
Well, that's a W.
It is a W.
Literally.
You want to give a W gift? Go to
That's
weenuslube.com and use code cyber. You can get this bad boy for $5. Just $5. This is an 8-ounce tube of lube for $5 plus shipping.
That's like 3 years worth of lube for your weenuses.
So many.
Is it Ween Eye if it's more than one?
I believe it's weenie. Nope, that's not what it is. Not what it is.
That's a different
That's
thing.
different.
That's different.
That's a hot dog. That's a glizzy.
That's a glizzy.
This
You
show is
got
off to a
me.
great start, ladies and gentlemen.
That's
As
right.
always.
Yeah, Chris is right. Hashtag ad.
What?
I didn't sign up for that.
What?
You've got me.
It's hashtag Adam. Am I right? Adam.
Yeah. He's here all week.
That's right. So, all right. Last week was Thanksgiving here in the U.S. If you're not watching from the U.S., if you're not listening to this from the U.S., let us know where you're watching from. We got Chris coming in from Colorado. Let us know where you guys are from. First time watching. What do you guys want to talk about? But it was Thanksgiving last week. So tons of turkey, all that good stuff. And there's plenty of time to watch Netflix's Buy Now documentary, which we've seen tons and tons of posts about. What are your thoughts, man? Go, Cory.
I think Thanksgiving brings on a focus on consumerism. It's, oh no, we have to buy presents for everyone for the holidays. And it's this mindset.
Thanksgiving gifts.
Thanksgiving gifts. No, this is when Black Friday and Cyber Monday and, there's even positive things like Giving Tuesday. But
it's Fat Tuesday and I think Ash Wednesday.
That's right.
Are the other.
Those are all the holidays in America. But it's gotten out of control for sure. It's so easy to buy. It's as they say, one click away on the online shopping networks. And I think we need to take a look at that. What is the real purpose of the holidays? Is it gifting or is it time with family? I think it's the latter.
What say you, Adam Peak?
I mean, in terms of the holidays, yeah, it's any time I think that we have sort of like idle hands. It's just, if you have the time off, which most people do. Although I did when I worked at Starbucks, I actually loved working on Thanksgiving and Christmas because you got paid time and a half and it was very busy and it went like that. It went by really quick. But in general, I think the majority of people who have time to watch a LinkedIn show at 8:30 every Monday morning probably had the day off or at least some time off. And so, I think that does create, now that we have these devices in our hands, it makes it so easy to just be like, well, I have 8 to 10 hours today. And so you just end up finding ways to spend time. And a lot of that happens to be shopping because we are just inundated with ads everywhere. Like I don't know, like weenuslube.com. If you use code cyber, you get 50% off. You're just inundated with these ads for today only on Cyber
You
Monday.
can't get away from them.
You just can't get away. You can't even listen to a show about packaging and get away from an ad about weenuslube.com. So I'll stop. But I think I think it's a good point, is that we've just made it so easy to buy really cheap stuff. Um, and I think that it was interesting to watch this documentary about that idea and about that concept, because that didn't, it didn't exist. And, to add on top of all that, we live in this house in Salt Lake City that is like 8 years old. And thus far, we've had repair people come out to fix our refrigerator,
Yeah.
our stove, our microwave, and our dishwasher.
Right.
All 4 of those devices, the repair people said, "Oh, it needs a part that is no longer made. You have to replace." We had to replace 4 major appliances in our house
Yeah.
because the people manufacturing the devices, which I think was like Frigidaire, just don't make the parts that are commonly breaking down. And so therefore you have to go out and buy a new one. Meanwhile, my parents have lived in the same house for 42 years. I'm pretty sure their KitchenAid microwave from the 1980s is still microwaving, and they have the same fridge. It's just, there is a component of this where it's like, yes, it's easy to buy now, but
Yeah.
also we've created this weird incentive structure to make stuff cheap and worse, because that's what makes the economy go. I don't know. It was an interesting.
Planned obsolescence, right?
That's what it was. Planned obsolescence. And for the record, my take on the documentary was overall not good. I didn't like the documentary, so I'm happy to talk about that.
Did it make you feel bad? Is that why you didn't like it?
No,
Did it hurt your feelings?
no, it did not hurt my feelings at all.
Yeah. So, like Charlie says, it's a throwaway society, right? Like, I think it's easy to buy something that you just need for a moment. And then, if it's clothing, you can wash it a couple times and then you get rid of it and you throw it away, or you give it away, right? You go, you donate it. There was one girl on the documentary from Ghana, though, that she's like, everybody's throwing stuff away. There's really no way. And then you kind of go to the beaches of Ghana and you're seeing, different areas of Africa where the stuff just gets dumped and there's just beaches and beaches of clothing and garbage. And they're like, we've only got, what was it? They've only got 30 million people in Ghana, and they're receiving 15 million pieces of clothing a week. And they're like, we don't need this much clothes. So, it just gets washed away. Like, they throw it away. And a lot of the stuff that's showing up isn't great anyway, because it's like some of this fast fashion, quick, clothing that just doesn't necessarily last. Right. But I will, on a personal note, I will say it's hard. It's hard not to buy stuff sometimes, right?
Especially when you have kids. Yeah, you're trying to satisfy their
even as an adult. Like, not gonna lie, like, neighbor gets a new car and you're kind of like, I could probably use a new car.
I like Porsches.
Like, man, I kind of like the idea of a new car. But no, like, that's kind of what it is. It's hard. It's hard not to. I think the worst part is like when you're seeing all these hauls on the TikToks and the Instagram. You're seeing people like unpacking like $500 worth of Shein stuff. A lot of times they just return. They do it for the video and they just return it.
Mm-hmm.
That's even worse.
It's even worse because all that plastic goes in the garbage, and then
we should buy Cory a microphone. He's got a gigantic microphone.
Cory, you need the Shure microphone.
So he's going to put it off to the side of the way that covers his whole face.
Yeah, it's so huge.
I remember to the point that you guys are making, though. I remember going to Rwanda, and not a Jag. You could buy a Jag. I remember going to Rwanda, and this was 2011, I think, and I saw just tons of like Tom's shoes everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, what is going on? And that's when somebody alerted me to this book. It's called When Helping Hurts. I strongly suggest reading that if you're looking to get involved in any sort of nonprofit work.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about how this whole model of buy one, give one sounds really great to Americans, but it's so harmful to a lot of these communities where there were people who there was an entire economic system based around selling shoes, getting them in and then reselling them in the markets. And, they were getting them for free. They were selling them for $2 or whatever it was. And then Tom's came along, and I think unintentionally,
sure,
I'm going to guess,
destroyed the whole shoe industry.
Destroyed this whole shoe industry because they just gave them away for free. And then there was an overabundance of them. And that because Americans just kept buying more and more Tom's shoes, and they were just having to find places to donate them. And so now they're just flooded everywhere. So sometimes our generosity, and especially our generosity, at least how we think of it, is creating a massive, a massive problem. And it's right. There's so much clothing in the world right now. I don't know of anybody who is lacking access to clothes, clean water, food, that kind of stuff, is shelter, all of that is true. But like, we should probably stop with these schemes on clothes, because it's everywhere. We got a long comment here.
It's an ad.
Oh,
if it's on yours, go ahead and delete it. But
is it for weenuslube.com?
It is not for weenuslube.com.
Okay.
So like, I don't know. It's just hard. Yeah, it's hard not to buy stuff. And then when there's like the promise of supporting, you kind of do it. You're like, all right, let me, I wasn't going to buy a pair of shoes, but since it's going to help someone, let me go ahead and do this because I'm doing it out of the goodness of my heart. Question from Chris: do you think the documentary lacked depth in exploring actionable steps to solve the problems? Also, I think it would have been helpful to talk more about government intervention and regulation.
Yeah, when one of the action steps, Chris, was like, put it in your Amazon cart and let it sit for 30 days. I'm like, that's not a realistic action step. That's not the nobody's gonna really do that. That's the point. Like, some of their things, it was like, well, we could buy these shoes that are made from 100% plant-based. It's like, okay, a few people are going to do that, but this doesn't.
We did
that. Yeah.
And you're not, where are you going to put those shoes? So we didn't unbox.
By the way, the shoes did not last very long. That was another part of the problem, is I wore them. I got them and I wore them, and I tried to see how long, and they started to rip and tear. And then it's like, well, now what? I mean, just
it's
in the trash.
In the video, in the movie, it was like, but you can recycle these and put them back into. It's like, who's going to recycle them? Who's going?
And at the same time, they were talking about how bad the store recycling drop off for for composite decking, how bad that was, how those bags and how that product is not going to get recycled. I'm like, no, it is going to get recycled.
It is working, right?
It is that is an actual thing that works, because that material can be turned into the thing that it actually gets turned into, and then part of your solution.
It doesn't mean that it is.
By and large, it is. I mean, the demand is there for composite wood. The demand is there for this material. If you put the material in, they want to get it. So there is a whole economy that works with that. There is no economy right now for recycled shoe materials. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of one, but that's not an actual actionable step. So I'm glad
Trex has had a lot of success. I agree.
They have. I'm glad Chris brought
but it's not all based off of recycled poly, right? And not everywhere that's doing store pickup is actually recycling. Like,
correct, not everywhere.
True.
Yeah. I mean,
it's not infallible.
Trex isn't producing everywhere, right? And the material that they're using is cheap and it's inexpensive. And like, if I go to my store and drop off, and say Chris goes to her store and drops off, to ship that product from Arizona, from Colorado, from around the country to where they're actually producing it, it costs more
Texas
than it does just to buy, virgin pellets. Unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's a big problem.
Did you say Trex is cheap?
No.
Oh, okay. I was like, that is not the case. The material,
no.
Yeah.
Plastic in the itself. They use more than just plastic pellets, but it's if we're comparing virgin plastic to the plastic from
like
a thin,
the soft plastics, low density polyethylenes that are getting recycled at store drop off.
And how much do you have to collect? I mean, an entire one of those barrels that they have at the store will not make one sheet of Trex, right? Like, that's really nothing when you boil it down. Like there's nothing there.
Yep.
But that's kind of the thing, right? Like, I don't know. There was a bunch of stuff in there that was interesting. There's kind of the list, right? They had 5 rules to how to build a brand, which was like buy more, right? Make people buy more. And then it was waste more, get them to have to order more things. I talked about like, planned obsolescence, where it's like this should only last this much time. There was the Phoebus cartel in 1925, where they conspired together to cut the light bulb lifespan from 2,500 hours to 1,000 hours in order for them to be able to sell more. Like, yeah, I mean, that's business. And we're on the packaging side of it. So we're packaging a ton of product that, and by we, it's like us listening, talking, package more product. So what can we do?
I think it's about education. It's about encouraging people, to not, and it's about encouraging companies to make better products that'll last longer, that are repairable. The fact that there's 2.5 million shoes produced every hour. That was the most shocking stat to me. And
Adam
12,000
how many
12,000 tons of plastic produced each minute. It's incredible. I can't even wrap my head around those numbers. No wonder our system is choking on this waste material. It's out of control.
Yeah, I think what can we do? Besides the education, is I think that we cannot stop consumption. We're just not gonna not gonna be able to stop it unless there is governmental regulations. That's the only way to stop consumption, and then maybe you have an economic problem. So this is a really complex system. I think what we can do in the packaging industry, though, is focus on the things that we can control. So, right sizing packaging, making sure that it's in good materials, giving options for PCR contents, because unlike if the Trex decking is in fact less expensive to get the virgin PE materials than it is the recycled, there are certain components of our industry where it is a better product, packaging product with PCR in it. Then that encourages recycling. It's a pull through on recycling and helps recyclers get more money. And so I think that we should be presenting those options. And again, I go back to this sales role, because there's a lot of salespeople who are trying to sell the thing that makes them the most money and not selling the thing that is best. So if you lightweight a product because it can be lightweighted, granted it's short-sighted, I agree, but if you don't do that and you make 10% more, and that means that you get more commission, and 10% commission on $100,000 is an extra 10 grand. And you know how many products you can get from Shein for $10,000 extra on your commission check?
All of them.
It's a lot. You could buy the whole website. So, I think that there is this.
Let's do that.
We do have an obligation to continue talking to the people that we have influence over, which is, call out companies that are using too much packaging. I think that's fine. And then hopefully somebody gets a hold of that in the industry and says, hey, by the way, you could be in this particular thing over here.
Right. Here's a new option that's less abrasive to the environment. Right.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at a couple comments here. We got Guillermo saying maybe companies should be obliged to recycle the stuff that they produce.
Well said.
That's easier said than done, right? Like, you've got like one of the examples was Coke, with the amount of plastic that they produce, but then talking about how recycling and all the stuff that they're doing, but they're one of the top, waste producers on the planet, right? And it was like, show people over here the marketing, but don't tell them the truth. It's it's so easy to blame the consumer and say it's the consumer's responsibility. Look, we've made everything possible. It's super easy to recycle. Now it's their job to recycle. But I don't know. That's a challenge. Bob's saying that they take grocery bags from the bins, so it's not necessarily downcycling. I think we kind of covered that one. We got Charlie talking about Kias and their 7-year guarantee.
Yeah. That's, I mean, Kia, I think they even have a 10-year warranty still, right? 10-year, 100,000 miles. And Kia is actually a great example of a car company that's made, not only have they been able to make more money by making higher quality cars, but their brand has grown. Like Charlie, that's a great example of a
huge pivot there.
Yeah, of a company that used to be like, oh, you bought a Kia, like that's cheap and gross and terrible, to now it's
They
like,
were buy one, get one free. Remember that?
yeah.
When they came out?
They had a logo.
I'll never forget that. Like, buy one, you get another one. Cool.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, I totally remember when they did that.
Oh my God,
look at the history.
Kia and Hyundai are two car companies that I think have really leveled up, and they're making very high quality vehicles. So,
and a lot of them are really nice looking too. So Kia, if you're interested, sponsor us.
Yeah.
One thing from the show was Eric Liedtke, he was the guy from Adidas, and he's like, I was responsible for the biggest turnaround, and then because of this, I left. I left after 26 years of being there because of the amount of waste that we created and blah blah blah. But he kept all the money, right? He felt bad, but he kept all the money.
Yeah,
and he's now. I kind of look, I'm like, wow, well, what did this guy do after he left with all that money? He's now the executive vice president of brand growth acceleration for Under Armour.
Oh, so
he feels terrible.
Same thing.
Terrible.
Yeah, that's as of like a few months ago. He did start a new company, a shoe company that was supposed to be like all, recyclable and etc. Under Armour bought that company and basically brought him on to do what he did at Adidas.
Yeah, I will say from the documentary, and we can get some questions here, but the thing that really bothered me, number one, I don't think it was a good documentary in the sense that I didn't like how they pieced it together. The like sort of AI futuristic, that stuff really it put me off. I was just like, this is dumb. I didn't personally, that was all a subjective opinion, but I didn't like that. And secondly, I think that they were disingenuous about a lot, like what is actually working with recycling. So like they talk about Coke and they're like, and this is just going to go to the landfill. It's like, no, those like the Sprite bottles and the Coke bottles and those clear PET bottles are actually recycled at a much higher rate than all plastic. So it's like, we'll take this data for all plastic that's ever made and be like, less than 8% of all plastic is recycled. So therefore your clear water bottles are going in the landfill. It's like, it's a pretty good chance that clear water bottle is going to actually get recycled. I know this because I've gone through the recycling centers. The economics work for that. PCR, like PET content is in demand right now, especially clear PCR is in demand. And you can follow this in like Plastics Today. You can track the rates. Like this is all data that they could have shown, but it didn't tell the story. So you could tell that it was like, I have a story I want to tell, which is that people shouldn't be buying as much stuff. Agreed. But also you hurt your point when you're unwilling to acknowledge things that are working, because there are actually there's EPR that they could have talked more about. I think Chris brought that up about government regulations.
Yes.
They could have talked about the increased rate of recycling and how there are some aspects that are working to help us get rid of some of this stuff, and they chose to not do it, and that really put me off. So that I don't think it's gonna, like, Exit Through the Gift Shop is a documentary that I will watch all the time. It's Hero Dreams of Sushi, incredible documentary. This documentary I think I'll watch once and probably won't watch again, just because I didn't like how they did it. They made some good points, but I thought it was kind of a crappy documentary, to be honest.
It's kind of, well, I felt I agreed on the AI stuff. I agreed on the animation stuff, but it's also directed, I think, at a younger audience. Which now, if you kind of scroll through any of the social medias, you would see this video happening, and then below it, you're going to see somebody gaming, and then like something else happening over here, because you've got to, you got to like do the magic and wow people to keep them
sure
engaged, but not paying attention.
But they don't have the money. honestly, like the people are trying to influence. I mean, maybe it's an influence for the long term, but like people in their 30s and 40s and 50s are the ones who we're the ones buying all the stuff by and large.
I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make my kid watch this. I'm going to sit down with my kid. They were out in like 10 minutes. They were out in 10 minutes.
Right.
Yeah, it didn't necessarily hit on all notes for everybody, but if you stuck through it, there were some interesting things in there. There was like 68,000 phones get produced per hour, 190,000 garments a minute, 12 tons of plastic per second, 400 million tons of plastic waste annually. But again, you don't necessarily know how they're calculating this. That was one thing that you don't see how they're gathering the data. But kind of just jumping into some of these questions here, we've got in terms of plastic and moving to paper.
Yes.
That's also not always the answer, right? We've talked about paperization before. Just because it's paper doesn't necessarily make it more sustainable. Now we got our buddy Drew Felty, action for India.
Have you seen this?
No, tell me about that. What is that?
It's a device where you can take a lot of your bags, and you can basically consolidate them down into, and I think you can actually ship them, if I recall, directly to the recycling center. So you can ensure that your bags are condensed and then
that's cool.
And then shipped over. So they're not just like sitting around everywhere. They've been around for a few years now. So it's a good call out, Drew.
Let's go have to check those guys out. Obago.com. We got Jay Buy Sell Clothing App. What do you think about the recycling efforts in Amsterdam? That they even have bins for textiles when you were there?
I didn't see much of that. Amsterdam is there's a lot of litter. The system for pickup is flawed dramatically, and they don't have garbage bins, and they don't have enough garbage bins, I should say, at least in the main heavy parts where there's lots of stores and things like that. It's we saw lots of pigeons picking up plastic bags and spreading the waste all over the place.
It's actually healthy for them. Did you know that?
Yeah, we kind of got used to walking over waste, and it's a beautiful city and a very clean place for the most part, but especially trash day, it's terrible. Everything everywhere. So they need to figure out how to collect waste better. And I think, need some bins, need to figure out how to incorporate some garbage bins. They just throw a bag on the street and then they're done. And that's not very efficient when you've got pigeons and you've got, birds pecking at them and spreading them around, homeless people searching through them. It's everything gets kind of spread out, and that's not the best. So they're constantly driving trucks on the sidewalks and cleaning the sidewalks off. So there's a massive amount of money spent in cleaning up after this waste when they could just collect it more efficiently in the first place, in my opinion.
Can I address Jameson's comment? So Jameson Perkins says, "Show me a salesperson who cares about anything other than sales." My point is that I think if you do care about sales, you should be currently selling the best possible solutions, because you're going to lose out on that customer long term. However, there's still a lot of people I know who are pushing for stuff, or they're even afraid to say like, "Hey, we're not very good for you," right? So the brands don't know packaging all that well, and so we can sell packaging that is maybe it's kind of okay, instead of being willing to say, "Hey, by the way, you really want to take a look at this over here." So it's not, of course, salespeople are going to care about sales, but I think the people who are going to win out in the long run are those who care about the brand and who care about their customer and who are willing to punt on a short-term win. And now I don't want to go to Amsterdam, Cory. So thanks a lot.
No, you should go to Amsterdam. It's a beautiful place, and just go outside the very center of the city a few blocks, and it's much cleaner and nicer. And the people there are wonderful. The food's amazing. Yeah, no, I highly recommend
Okay.
Amsterdam as a place to visit. And they had, to answer Bob's question, they had pressure washers. They were constantly pressure washing the streets. And to me, that seemed like something that shouldn't have to be done all the time, when they could have just had the proper bins to collect the waste in the first place. That's my opinion. But everyone has a different mindset with waste collection.
No, just looking at Guillermo's comment here on transporting and selling, how it can impact carbon footprint. Going back to Thanksgiving, so I've got a relative that's in the freight industry, and we were kind of just talking through what's happening in LA. So in LA, they've made it where the Port of LA, you're only allowed electric vehicles. So electric semis, no more what they call ICE vehicles, which are like
Internal combustion. Yeah.
internal combustion engine vehicles. Yeah. And he's like, there's a couple things. One is now you've got a whole separate industry where people have, like, freight companies have these electric vehicles that will go into the port. They'll go to the ships, they'll unload, they'll drive it right outside of the gate of the port, and then they'll transfer it onto, a regular truck.
Jeez.
He's like, the reason is a regular truck is like 500 grand. A standard truck, an electric truck is like 500 grand. A regular truck's like 180 grand. Big difference. It's like the batteries on these electric trucks are like 12,000 pounds. It eats into like a quarter of the volume of what the weight that a truck can carry legally on the roads. So now you've got to carry, a quarter less. So he's like, for every 3 trucks that are on the road, you've got to put on an additional 4th truck. So he's like, it's not necessarily better. Like, it's actually worse. And he's like, the regulators are like, well, why don't you put more weight on the trucks instead of just limiting it at, I think it was like 36,000 pounds. But like, if we go higher than that, then you're going to damage the roads. You're going to, increase the chance of accidents. Like, these vehicles are built a certain way. And he's like, it doesn't necessarily reduce your carbon footprint. It actually grows it. Which, I don't know. I don't know anything about trucks. I'm like, oh, electric vehicles, 100%. Look at that. But yeah, he's like, now it's like there's a whole industry now that's like a whole business where you just drive from the gate to the ship, back to the gate, unload. He's like, that's adding another like 12-hour shift, right? Because like you're creating a bottleneck at the end of the port, and that, that all impacts sustainability. It impacts speed. It impacts cost. Definitely impacts packaging. So just because there's regulation out there doesn't mean it's always the best.
Right.
They don't have the infrastructure to charge all those trucks either yet.
They don't.
And that's, I mean, they're putting them, I think this is a cart before the horse situation. This is way too, you need to have the infrastructure first for charging the vehicles, and you need to have the battery technology light enough to where it makes sense financially for the companies. I agree with your friend. That's
going back to the
challenge.
Netflix documentary, look at what's happened with other battery-based technology, which is our recovery of this stuff is not good. And I did think that the documentary did a good job of talking about that. Yeah, exactly what Charlie's saying. We have shown as a society that we are not good at recovering the batteries. We're not doing a great job at recycling them. And that was something that was new to me. And it made sense how they tracked that. I don't like when they put a tracker in the LDPE plastic bottles, and then they're like, look, it didn't make it. I'm like, it's because you had a tracker in there. It's going to sort it out. But this one made a lot of sense. And when it shows that it gets these places which are harmful to people. So that's a whole other component of this, the electric vehicle thing is the recovery is hard, and we're not there yet. Unless we really invest in nuclear energy, I don't think that electric cars are going to be taking off the way that we think they are.
No, for sure. We got one last point here from Seth. It's I struggle with some of the discussions about sustainability and packaging. What is sustainable for one person or a company might not be sustainable for another. Packaging involves many more factors than just one physical item. This is what I found challenging regarding sustainability.
Well said.
100%.
I asked a question over the weekend where I was at the store and I took a picture of some produce that was wrapped in plastic and some produce that just had the zip ties with the UPC on it. And I just said, what's more sustainable? And understandably, I got a lot of this one or this one.
Yeah.
It's because most of that stuff was shipped there in plastic anyways, because plastic is a great barrier and we want to keep our food fresh. And somebody was like, my favorite comment was, oh, we just need to be better at planning. And it's like, somebody said, like, I don't even know what I'm going to eat in the next 2 weeks. Like you can't plan. You
Right.
can't plan for fresh produce. You just have to always have it. That's what's happening. And so you have to have packaging to support that. So anyway, I thought it was a fun conversation.
Yeah. Last comment here before we wrap this up. Jay asking if you think buy now is going to make an impact in the boardroom. Yeah, I think the only impact was that the woman who managed to get all 7,000 Amazon employees to sign a document saying that they had to have a carbon guidelines end up getting fired, right? Like that's
well, and they had the climate pledge, right? So Amazon came out with their climate pledge and they sponsored Climate Pledge Arena. And I think that I don't think that the documentary is going to have an impact. I think that people gathering together and bringing data I think that does have an impact, but a documentary aimed at
Amazon's carbon footprint increased.
Well, that's because the size of their company drastically increased. So you can say in a documentary, again, this is part of my problem is like, well, and then Amazon's carbon footprint increased. Like that's because the company grew by 15x. Like, of course, their carbon footprint is going to increase with the growth of the corporation. But a documentary aimed at a bunch of 18-year-old like brain rot TikTok kids is not going to make an impact in the boardroom today because they don't drive commerce, they don't make purchasing decisions. And that was my problem with the documentary. It wasn't the data or like the collective bargaining of individuals. I think that can make a difference. It's that I think they targeted the wrong people.
Yeah, and I agree. The way that this was laid out with all the AI, all the animation, and the way it was chopped up, it could have been cut down, been a little bit more impactful and straightforward with some answers, not so much sarcasm and goofiness.
Should we get Brody? Should we get Brody the last word?
Yeah.
What we got here?
The amazing co-host, Brody.
Feel it with the beginning chapter of electric vehicle innovation. I don't know.
I agree.
We've got there's BYD, right? BYD is Chinese electric vehicles that are crushing it all over Asia, but they've made them super cheap. And now, we've put crazy tariffs on them to bring them in. I think it's like 4 or 5 times the cost in order to be competitive. So they could have been, inexpensive vehicles. But
I'm sure that'll change now that Elon Musk is the head of an unofficial government agency. I'm sure that those tariffs are going to. Cory, what's your take?
No comment. I like Charlie's comment. Hydrogen. There's some major innovations coming, and I think battery technology is advancing drastically and at an exponential basis. And that's exciting to me. Is that maybe these batteries won't be 12,000 pounds for these trucks in the next year or 2 or 5, and maybe the truck will only maybe it'll be cost neutral. Maybe they'll figure out how to add enough juice to the infrastructure so that we can charge all these vehicles all the time. California asking its
those batteries are so just the raw materials for the batteries is so polluting.
For sure. So that's what's
insane.
changing, right? There's new innovations, new materials that are being innovated, and that's exciting. So we'll see what happens.
We should have my friend on. His name's Phil Clark. I've known him since preschool. Shout out to Tall Phil. And he's worked at NREL, the National Renewable Energy Lab, on hydrogen technology. So he's done a ton of work in this arena. The Biden administration did invest quite a bit of money into hydrogen. So it'll be interesting to see if it's, but we've been talking about hydrogen. I mean, Honda made a hydrogen car like a decade ago. So it's been around as long as electric. So I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Last comment from Jay, just saying that see who's shopping at Goodwill. It's a lot of the TikTok audience.
Yeah.
My kids go to Goodwill. Like they're excited to go, and they're like walking out with like $20 worth of, a $500 Shine haul.
Yeah, I'm not saying they don't have money. I'm just saying that they don't make they don't have a lot of it. If they had a lot of it, they wouldn't be on TikTok looking at Sheen hauls and going to Goodwill. My kids do the same thing, but also that's not going to impact the boardroom.
Right.
That's my point.
Yeah. That's it, guys. Thanks for that downer, Adam. And we'll be here next week. All right, guys. We'll see you. Thanks for joining us. This was an extra long show. It was good. If you haven't seen the movie, the documentary, go check it out. Netflix, buy now. Some interesting things. Let us know what you think. Keep throwing stuff in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, do us a favor and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next week. Right? Weenus Loop.
Live from Studio 3, this is Packaging Today.